So we are going to start the second session of this morning. The next speaker is a cooker, but not only. He works in GitHub. He's a Google developer expert, and he's going to talk about testing web accessibility. So the stage is yours. Please make some noise for Adrian Bolonio.
Let's talk about web accessibility. I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Adrian. I'm from Spain. I work as an accessibility software engineer at GitHub, where I try to advocate for the accessibility principles mainly on the online world. And you can find me in Twitter or GitHub almost everywhere under my surname. And the first question that I recently had is, what is this A11Y that we see when we talk about accessibility? I don't know if you all know about this, but this is because there are 11 letters between the A and the Y in the word accessibility, the same as internationalization, I18N. So you're going to see this a lot when we talk about accessibility, so now you know. And this question comes because now, more and more, I see that we are talking about web accessibility while we develop in the development world. And this is because we made a huge work in physical accessibility. Why is so obvious that those 4 situations are completely wrong? The first 2 are a very steep ramp. The third one is a ramp with stairs at the end. And the fourth picture is a totally useless ramp. There's a ramp with fences around it. So this is wrong, right? We agree. Let me put you another example. There's an accessible button, and someone using a wheelchair presses the accessible button, and surprise, surprise, there are stairs at the end of the door. So we might think that the creator of those accessibility buttons or ramps either is not disabled, and second, the testing phase has not been done properly. So yeah, completely wrong, right? But it's very obvious when we see it in the online world, in the real world. We see that it's not a ramp or there are stairs. But when we move to the online world, when we move to web, it's not that clear that a website is not accessible. Let me tell you more about when we talk about web accessibility. We talk about webs, tools, technology that is built and designed for everyone to use, right? Not excluding anyone when using these tools. Let me maybe an example in the online world. So you go to your favorite e-commerce shop, let's call it Jungle, and you might want to see your latest purchases, and you call the support team and they can tell you something. Oh, you need to click in the button in the top right corner, or something you want to change your email address and you want to see the settings and say, you need to click in the button with the engine icon. But for someone who is blind, there's no such as button who looks like an engine icon, or there's no such as top right corner. So we need to think about this when we develop our applications. Usually, and I already mentioned it, usually we think about web accessibility as visually impaired people, but there are a lot of other types of impairments, and we can classify those impairments in permanent, temporary, or situational. For example, touch, hear, see, or speak. For some of them, for example, touch, we need hardware. And so far, I'm only a software developer. So I'm going to focus in visually impaired people when we develop our software. Quick numbers, 2021, we were around 7.9 billion people in the world. And more than 2.2 billion people are visually impaired of any kind. colorblind, completely blind, which is 100%. I see a lot of people here with glasses. So doesn't matter what percentage. We need to consider these people as our customers, our users. So yeah, let's go to the main topic. Let's see how can we test the code that we write. Testing is super cool, not only for accessibility, for just web development. Can find a lot of vulnerabilities in our code. And automate tests are super good. They can free up your QA team or yourself when you're manually testing every part of your application, but it's not magic. Automate tests are not magic. And we need to think that only between 20 and 50%, I would say 20 to 30% of all accessibility issues can be found using automate tests. So we need to consider automate tests as a part of a larger process where manual test is as important as automate test. So I'm going to show you a bit of the practices that I use every day, or they've been useful for me in my everyday work. And we're gonna talk about 3 parts: development, so testing while we develop, automate test, and manual test. So the first tip, advice, whatever you want to call it, is test your code while you develop. I've been long a React developer, so I found Axe Core React. So Axe is an accessibility engine built by DQ, and they have several libraries, and one is for React. There is a port for Vue. It is not done by DQ, and for Angular, you can use the WebDriver JS with Protractor directly. So let's see how it works. And well, you need to install as a developer dependency in your application, npm install or yarn add, whatever package package management you use. What you need to make sure is you import the library only if it's a the production environment, because you don't want to expose those vulnerabilities for the public. What is this tool doing? Whenever you run your application in your browser, if you open the console log, the development tools of the browser, you're gonna see the vulnerabilities of your application. We can see what is the error. So in the first one, say Adria roles use must confirm to valid values, probably is an Adria role, my custom role. We can see the severity level, which is critical in this case. We can see minor, moderate, serious, or critical. We can see which element of our HTML or DOM structure is causing this error. And we see a link to DQ University, which is the documentation that DQ put together for you to learn more about this issue and how to solve it. And if you have several instances of the same mistake or vulnerability, you can see them grouped. The next thing that we can do to test our code while we develop are linters. I hope you all use linters, but for those who don't know what a linter is a tool that you tell the tool, tell me what I'm doing something wrong, and then the tool tells you in the code editor. Very rough definition. You need to install it as well as a developer dependency. First, you have to have ESLint installed, of course. And you can include the plugin, the JSX A11Y, inside the plugins of your ESLint config file. And it is enough to extend the recommended accessibility rules. If you want to extend a specific rule, you need to include it in the rules section, where you're gonna see, as any other linter, is the error in the code editor when you have a mistake. You can see this underlined red wavy line, and you can hover with your mouse and you can see the mistake. You can see those as well in the terminal when you run your application. So whatever is more comfortable for you. And if you're testing a component library or design system, You can use Storybook. Storybook is a wonderful tool to test components in an isolated environment, so you don't need to test your buttons or labels into your application. So I wrote something on how to test the accessibility for a component, an isolated component. Use the development tools of the browser. So we move from the code editor to the browser now, and Chromium, either Chrome or Edge, and Firefox has wonderful development tools of the browser. They have a lot of features, but one that I want to show you today is the code picker. So when you inspect a text element, you can see the color of the code, the color of the text. So if you click in the small square with the color, you will see the color picker. And you can see this contrast ratio number. This means that the contrast ratio between the color of the text and the color of the location where the text is located, so a button, for example, is not passing either the AA or the AAA standards for the WCAG. You can see the same in Firefox. So like this, you will see if the color contrast between your text and the place where you put the text, it is correct. There is a tab in Chrome called Accessibility, the same that you use Tiles and Computed. There's one for accessibility, and you can see the whole accessibility tree and the computational name. Computational name means the name that the screen reader is going to use when announcing this element. So in this case, you see the order. So ARIA label by is more important than ARIA label, then is more important than content of the element, then is more important than the title attribute. And you can see the same in Firefox. You can see the order of the accessibility name. Of course, you all write your own unit tests. So with Jest or other testing library. But in this case, Jest has a extension or library for Axe. Again, we need to install as a developer dependency in our application, and we can write our unit tests. In this case, this test is importing the whole app, and of course, expect not to have violations. And what I'm using here is the React DOM server to pass my app to a string, then throw the string into the Axe engine, and expect not to have violations. So when I run npm run test or yarn test, you're gonna see in the terminal pretty much the same information that we saw with React Axe. What is the element that is causing the problem? What vulnerability, accessibility issue it is? A direct link to DQ University again, so you can learn more about the issue. Then we move from development to automating and CLI tools. So yeah, I think they're pretty similar of the other tools. Let's see how they work. In this case, it is a CLI tool, command line interface, so you need to use these tools in the terminal. So you need to install it globally in your computer if you want to use it anywhere. And you just need to run the command axe followed by the URL of the page that you wish to test, and it's going to perform test in a headless instance of Chrome. Pretty similar. Again, we are in the Axe library, so same results. What is the error? Where is the error? And which element is the error? Link to the documentation so you can learn more about this. Very similar library is P11Y. Again, we need to install it globally, and it works the same. P11Y followed by the URL that we want to follow to test. I'm testing Stack Overflow because I think it's pretty standard website. And we can see very similar results. We can see the error, a bit of information. We can see what element is the one who's provoking or causing the vulnerability. We have something that we didn't have before, which is what principle of the WCAG or WCAG is violating. So we can see that the principal guideline G18 is failing, and you can go, because we don't have any link to any documentation here, you can go to Google and then find the way that to fix this problem. You can test it over localhost. You don't need to run it over URL, so that's good. But maybe you can think, well, I have a lot of URLs to test. So is there any way that I can write a script? So P11Y has a CI extension from the same library. And you can write a config file, a JSON file with an array of URLs. The good thing of this library, you can perform actions. You can wait for an element with an ID to be in the screen. You can wait for an element with a class. You can click elements. You can take screen captures. So you just need to run p11y -ci or dash ci, and then it's going to find these 3 URLs. It's going to take a bit longer because you're testing more URLs. And these screen captures or screenshots are good for several reasons. You can use it for reporting purposes. You can use it for visual regression test if you have a visual regression test engine. We can see very similar results always. So what is the error? Which element is the one who's provoking the error? The whole DOM structure of how to find this element. And in the root folder of our application, we can see the config file and the screen captures. So again, reporting purposes or visual regression tests, they're super useful for that. Lighthouse. Lighthouse is a tool that is built by Google, and it comes built in every Chrome browser. They used to call it Audit, and now they call it Lighthouse. But you can use it in the terminal. Again, you install it globally in your application, and same as the other ones, Lighthouse followed by the URL that you want to test. I'm using --view because I want to throw the, I want to open the report at the end. But in this case, it's not a headless instance of Chrome. It's a full instance. So you can see all the tests that are performed. Performance, responsiveness, low internet, no internet, etc. And since I use --view, the report is open automatically. You can see the scores. You can click on accessibility. And you can see, again, pretty similar information. What is the error? Which element? You have a direct link, which is set learn more from Google. So they teach you a bit of what is the error and how to solve it. So those tools that you can run in the CLI, in the terminal, you can use them to automate the accessibility test of your application. And if it happens that you have your code in GitHub, you can use GitHub Actions. I'm not gonna lie, and GitLab has very good CI/CD engine as well. They use P11Y automatically. So you can do pretty much the same in GitLab, but GitHub Actions are a list of tasks. They are workflows. They are YAML files. So you can put in your repository. It's basically having your CI/CD directly in your repository, and you can do a lot of things. In this case, I wrote one GitHub action per tool that I shown you. So unit test, Axe, P11Y, and Lighthouse. The P11Y is not here because it's exactly the same as the Axe, just changing the last command. And what is this GitHub action doing? So this, in lines between 3 and 8, you can see that I want these GitHub actions to run every time that I push to main or I make a pull request to main. So every time that you make a pull request, you're going to see something like this, which are the checks or GitHub actions. I use one for Axe, P11Y, unit test, and Lighthouse. And we can see if they pass or if they fail. You can inspect the GitHub action, clicking in details, and you're going to see the terminal, the CLI tool running. In this case, I opened the unit test, and you can see why is not passing the test. Again, the same results that you will find in your terminal, but you're going to find it in the GitHub terminal. You might have seen there's one green check, which is Lighthouse. So the question is why the other ones are failing and Lighthouse is not failing. This is because Lighthouse is not a testing library, it's a reporting library. So green means Lighthouse generated the report correctly. So it's up to you to click in details. Then Lighthouse generates a report publicly. If you want, or your repository is private and you have your company and you don't want anyone to know about this, you need to have your Lighthouse server running and you need to configure the GitHub action. Lighthouse has a wonderful documentation about this, so it's very easy. But in this case, you can see a link to storage.googleapis.com. So you can click, see the public report. Again, it's green because it's generated correctly. And again, pretty similar behavior. You click in accessibility and you can see a bit more information. Good. So yeah, you can see all the actions in this repository. You just need to go to the pull requests because it's a new branch. And you can see the checks and experiment with the code. And I wrote an article about all these things with a bit more information on how to set up the Lighthouse engine as well. So if you want to read more about it, go there. We mentioned at the beginning that only 20 to 30% of the accessibility vulnerabilities can be found with automate tests. So we need to do manual tests and simulation tests. And we cannot talk about manual tests and simulation tests without talking about screen readers. Screen readers are tools that allow visually impaired people, and not only, any screen reader user, to read the text that appears in the computer screen with a speech synthesizer. Every operating system has their own one. So Apple, either Mac or iOS, has voiceover. Windows has narrator. Linux has Orca. And Android has TalkBack. You can use other commercial screen like NVIDIA, which is free, and JAWS, which is very expensive. But I'm not going to talk about screen readers today because I can talk about like very, very long. But I'm going to talk about how to test accessibility manually in the browser with some extensions. So we are back to our lovely Axe library. They have a Chrome extension, and you can find it in the DevTools of your browser, either Chrome or Firefox. You click in Analyze. They're going to analyze your website, and it's going to be exactly the same results that you have in the CLI or in the React Axe with a bit of better UI. What is the error? The impact we can see in the right one, so it's critical. What is the expected behavior? And you have the link to DQ University to learn more about this. Very similar application is ARC Toolkit. Same, you find it in the development tools. And you click in Run Test. There's a lot of families of tests. I'm clicking in images. So I want to see which images that don't have a alt text, an alternate text. I click in the result and I go directly to the image. The good thing as well is like the window is going to highlight it with image no alt. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I discovered a new extension which is called no alt. And it displays no alt in the images doesn't have it, and it displays the whole alt text below the image, which is very, very cool to identify. You will see how many images in websites and Twitter and Instagram don't have alt text. Accessibility Insight. This is a tool built by Microsoft, and one specific feature of this tool is the tab order map. So if you start the map, you can click in, so you can use the tab key, and you can see the map and the order of the tab key. Why is this so important? The tab key order of the application needs to be consistent with the content and the flow that you want the user to follow. So you cannot have an order like jumping around if it's not consistent with the content. So you want to see this map, and maybe you want to take a screenshot, use it for analysis. Is this what we want or not? Chrome and Firefox has it now natively, so you can use it as well. Wave is a very complete tool. This is not found in the DevTools. It's just in the extension bar. When you click, it's very quick. It makes a full analysis of your website. It shows a lot of things like no alt images. You can see what heading levels structure, which is very good for accessibility in both SEO. You can see color contrast. We already talked about the importance between the text color and the location. You can deactivate the whole styles, and you can see if the DOM structure is the correct one. Now that we use Flex, and we can change the order independently of the order in the DOM structure. So this is very, very interesting to analyze. Or you can analyze in the bottom the code of the website. So if you want to dig a bit more, what has been done. And again, both native Chrome developer tools, you can click in rendering instead of console at the bottom, and they have an emulation of vision deficiencies. In this case, is blurry vision. Or Firefox has the same. In the accessibility tab, you can simulate different color blindness like protanopia or tritanopia, which is changing some colors to another one, and you will see why the importance of not relying only on colors and use icons and other text, because red is not always red for everyone. Good. So yeah, this is what works for me in my daily work, testing my code while I develop. I use the browser development tools. I try to automate not only my accessibility test, but everything that I can, so I don't have to do it. And it is very important that not only focusing on automate tests and do manual tests and simulation tests, either with screen readers, browser extensions, or there are two very, very useful tools. The first one is the tab key. Just try to use any website, especially yours, or web application, using your tab key. If you can perform any action that you can perform with a mouse, with a tab key, you're good. And the other main tool is use a screen reader and then close your eyes. And if you can perform any action, you're good. I normally write about accessibility and dev stuff. So if you want to read more about this, go to my website. I want to take advantage and recommend you a small course in edX called Introduction to Web Accessibility. This is an official course by the W3C, which is the community that set the standards on HTML, CSS. And it's not only for tech people. It is an introduction to web accessibility. It's very, very interesting to start with the topic. I want to leave with two sentences that for me summarize the meaning of accessibility. And the first one is, it's not just about disabled users being able to access your website. It's about everyone being able to access your website. We've seen at the beginning that there's a lot of type of impairments, and we have permanent, we have temporary, and we have situational. So for example, I remember that I dropped one of my laptops and my screen was completely black, and I don't have any second screen, and I need to, buy a flight. So you need to use your screen reader for that. You don't have your glasses with you, you don't have the mouse with you, you have your kid in one hand, and you need to tap using the tab key. Anything that you can think of, no offense, but we are all disabled. We don't know yet when it's gonna be 20% or 100 or 70 or 0. So think about it when you develop your applications. Apart from simulation and manual tests, just put yourself in, or think about what if someone would need to use my web application. Because accessibility is not a feature. It has never been and will never be a feature. Because no disability is an option. No one chooses to be disabled. And we cannot treat it as a feature. We cannot treat it as a post process. We need to start including in accessibility, or we should have started including accessibility in our development process. The same as we do with testing, the same as we do with specification, the same as we do with UX reviews. We need to start doing either pair accessibility testing, pair accessibility ideation, specification, whatever, from the very, very early stage. So and it's not a responsibility of developers, UX team, PM, CEO, the company needs to get involved in this one. I got a lot of questions, I don't know how to get my company involved. I read recently, I have a friend who's keep telling me this one, is a performance and SEO expert, and he's keep telling me, Google will arrive, it will arrive one moment when Google say, your web is not accessible, page 5. And this is money for companies. And this is the moment where where companies will invest in accessibility. Let's try to take advantage of this one and make it now. If we are here, we can be here, but we want to be here, right? So let's try to be better. Because if we make better web apps and web applications and web sites, not only we are making a better technology, a better internet, this is reflected in the society. I mean, we all use websites, we all use phones, everything is informatized now. So try to think about your users. Let me tell you something, you don't know your users. So try to think about every user that might be using your website, then you will start from a very good point. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Adrian.
I'm gonna leave the feedback QR. This not only helps me to improve my talk, helps them to improve their event as well. Can I say something more? Grazie a tutto il team di GRUSP per il fantastico evento, veramente top.
Grazie. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if there are some questions in the room, but yeah, okay, there is one here.
Thank you, and thank you, Adrian. It was an amazing talk. Gonna check out all the websites that you put out there. It was insane.
Okay.
So I don't know if my questions is respectful of the standards that you talked about today, but I see that whenever you want to use something, some kind of a feature on a website or a web application or whatever it is, you have to kind of tab around with your keyboard. So is there a way, maybe standardized way, to access kind of like stories that the user that needs accessibility to these stories can, instead of just tabbing around to reach what they want to reach, maybe there is a better way, a faster way, a way to kind of talk to the user and tell them somehow that instead of, I don't know, push five times tab to reach some kind of feature, just press FW and that feature is right there. Is there some kind of story for the user to follow on?
Yes, there is. There is a very well-known or very standardized practice, which is the skip to content link. So I'm gonna take advantage and put my website anyway. But if you tap one time, there is skip to content. So I don't need to go through all the menu. If I click skip to content, then I am already here. I don't need to pass all these links that you might not want to do. You can do more than skip to content. You can say skip to content, which is this one, so you can tap a second time and say skip to blog or skip to latest news or whatever you have in your, maybe you have a very long single page application and you can go to the different sections. About shortcuts. shortcuts are very tricky. And this is something that recently I did in GitHub. The shortcut that you think is cool in your website, someone else uses it for something else. So if you say, if you click in K or whatever, let's go with single character shortcuts. If you click in K for opening whatever you want, then a screen reader user use K for volume up, whatever. So it is cool, but you need to give always the user the option to remap this. So if it's Q for you, well, it's Q, or sorry, it's K for me, but go to settings and put the one that you want. This is one option. The option that you can do, again, is these links that are outside of the window. So, I don't know, top minus 3000. So they have to be visible because they need to be tabbable. So you cannot have tab index 0 or something like that. But they need to be not hidden, not displaying on, but outside of the window. So whenever you tap, it goes there because you have colon focus. And you can put them there. And then you can use as much as you want to tell this story that you were saying, like, oh, go to the blog, go to here, go to there. You can choose this one.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I have a question, if you don't have it.
No.
What are the common accessibility mistakes that you have find out so far?
Recently, we have the WebAIM survey. Every year they make one, the same as the state of JavaScript, of the state of CSS. And for the 4th year in a row, the same common mistakes are always the same, which is no alt in images, color contrast. Color contrast is the top one. No alt in images, using buttons and as links and links as buttons. So the thumb rule is links take you somewhere and buttons perform actions. Buttons don't take you somewhere unless they perform an action first. Maybe Google Analytics events and send an event. Not bubble elements, so like dead elements that you can only access with a mouse, but they don't exist for someone who's using a keyboard, and no language in the website. So when you start your website your website or page is HTML, you need to put lang, it, or n, or s. Those language are going to be used for the screen reader to change the grammar or the character set that is going to read.
I think also that the worst thing about web accessibility is when someone asks, "Oh, is there any automatic tool to do it for me, for alt, for everything?" But okay, it happens sometimes. Any question from Hopin or yeah, one here?
Okay, thank you, Adria. In your experience, you showed us a lot of tools and extension, etc. In your experience, how reliable and exhaustive are they? Do they give false positives? Do they catch all the things? And how much manual work should we do? And maybe should we do as should we hire really impaired people to test specific things, or maybe we can train to use all the tools we need.
Great questions. Let me start for the first one.
Yeah, sorry.
Automators are super cool. They free you to not doing it, but they are not 100% reliable. Not only accessibility automate test, any other automate test. So I'm going to put you an example. I'm going to go back to alt text. So with automate test, I can test if your image has an alt text. I cannot test, and I'm going to leave out access, artificial intelligence because we are not there yet. We cannot test the quality of the alt text that you have. So I have a good friend who is blind, and he's an amazing developer at Microsoft. And he said, like, look, if you put a porn picture, and if you put an alt, say a dog playing with a ball, for me it's a dog playing with a ball, you can trick me. I see recently a lot of keywords in alt to use it as SEO, which is completely wrong, because again, a screen reader is gonna go and say image, chair, table, wood, and it's like, yeah, what is the image? This is one thing, okay? So we need human part here to test the quality of the accessibility things that we do. We can test if they are there, if a color contrast is correct, but sometimes you don't have a button with a solid color. You have a button with a background image because it's a super nice effect. Well, we cannot test this one, sorry. You need to use a secondary tool to say, this text in this specific part of that image is correct. That's one thing. Second thing, should we hire impaired people to test these things? Should we, I'm giving you another question, which is, should we hire a JavaScript developer to do JavaScript? So it is good. I can teach someone to do JavaScript. I can teach someone to test accessibility. But if you hire someone who is disabled and has the knowledge, there are a lot of blind, visually impaired developers. They will add in huge value to your team, obviously. Not only because they are going to tell you, hey, don't do this like this, because this is the way that you think. I'm telling you about manual test and screen reader. The way that you are going to test it is not the way that they use it. It's crazy, the speed of the screen reader is crazy how they use it. So it's very valuable to have someone who is a screen reader user to tell you, use this semantic HTML element, use a section, don't use a div, use a whatever, a UL with LIs, or use a nav, or use an Adria menu item or collapse. Things that they are extremely valuable for your semantic that you will just read and think about, oh, maybe I need to use it. Like, no, they know it. So it's super, super valuable to hire disabled people for your team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Thank you.